Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, June 16th, 2020, and today we're going to be taking a look at the pluralvote.com graphic, forecast for the 2020 presidential election. I was originally going to make a Senate election projection tonight, but I'm actually going to start working on the subscriber-decided election night. I'm actually putting together all the graphics. It will be a CNN theme. Other than that, I decided to not necessarily do the Senate elections. We'll probably do that one tomorrow. Today, we're going to be taking a look at this forecast up until probably around 5:38 whenever they release their forecast. I think that these are always very fascinating. We can see how the chances have changed pretty dramatically over time in a number of key states here. And it does show us very cool information state by state. So I really think that this is such an informative model. There's a lot here and there's a lot to see. I believe they predicted 95% of House races correctly in 2018. So, again, a pretty good track record, especially pertaining to the midterm elections. I understand a presidential election is different, but this is, again, very fascinating to see the model and see how the numbers pretty much shift. So these pretty much match up with the data that I have on my electoral map. Now, there are some areas where I am pretty shocked to see a lighter red than darker, states such as Alaska or Montana, or Missouri, which actually Missouri I could see how it could be considered a likely state, but it's an 8.9% margin. I was thinking maybe somewhere around 12-13%, but seeing states like Montana, which are expected to not go to Trump by such a large margin, are pretty surprising to me. Now, for some of these states, I do see why they could be narrowed up because of, lackluster polling data and, things that just really aren't helpful to the overall election model itself, just because they aren't really giving the full picture. So let's go ahead and choose Alaska, for example. The Zogby Interactive poll, which is an absolutely horrible pollster, gave Joe Biden a 5-point deficit against Donald Trump. Donald Trump leads 45% to 40%. So realistically, this is not going to happen. Donald Trump is going to win Alaska by a lot larger than 4.8%. But because of that, it is releasing down the numbers in the state of Alaska and making it very difficult. So if we actually go ahead and take a look at some of these other states, I think we can go ahead and take a look at the swing states. So obviously a lot of these safe states. I do want to note that in states such as Virginia, Donald Trump right now has a, let's go ahead and see. I don't know why it keeps, maybe I need to zoom out. Sorry. Let's go ahead and do that. But for Virginia, Donald Trump has a 6.4% chance at winning. Joe Biden has a very large chance at winning the state of Virginia, and it looks very solid in this state. So the polls all indicate that. The recent polls are average 51.6% to 38.7%. The forecast is 52 to 41. So again, not a good look for Donald Trump. As we move over into some other states, let's go ahead and see. I don't know why it does that. If we go ahead and see the state of Colorado, 2.4% win chance for Donald Trump. It's not a good shot whatsoever. Again, a number of these states are becoming more, safe for the Democratic Party. Same thing over in states such as, I'm trying to see why it won't let me on the model itself. New Mexico, 6% chance for Donald Trump. So again, that's the reason mainly why I don't consider a lot of these states to be quote unquote swing states, but we can go ahead and take a look at some other states. So what I was shocked to see is a state such as Georgia. Georgia right now is being considered more likely to go to Joe Biden than Donald Trump. So in fact, over a small period of time, Donald Trump had a lead in the state of Georgia. Now, I will say that Georgia probably will end up going for Donald Trump, but it just, the new polling data that was actually released, I believe, I don't think that one was thrown into this pollster ratings, but they showed, I think, Biden ahead by 1%, or John Ossoff was ahead by 1%, and Biden was down 1%. Whatever it was a very close race, and it was Georgia. It was done by public policy polling, so Democratic lean pollster, but Georgia is mildly in play, but I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. Joe Biden is the favorite to win. I do think that he is the favorite to win in North Carolina, but I definitely don't think that Georgia is more likely to go to Biden than North Carolina. Florida, I don't think is more likely to go. Maybe around even with North Carolina, but I'd rather really suggest, I guess, in terms of the overall margin, I really would see North Carolina voting to possibly, the left of North Carolina in the election, depending on turnout. In Arizona, I definitely think that Arizona should be a lot more blue, especially a lot bluer than Georgia, North Carolina, and Florida combined. Arizona will 100% vote to the left of all three of those states. But it is interesting to see that Joe Biden does lead in a state such as Arizona. In fact, they actually have this little graphic, which I think is phenomenal. It's the chances of a Trump win in states won by less than 5%. So if this doesn't go away, we're just going to go ahead and take a look at that. But the chances of a Trump win in the state in 2016 2016 won by less than 5%. Arizona, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, New Hampshire, Florida, Nevada, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Maine, and Colorado. So Donald Trump now has a very close to 0% chance of winning in a state such as Colorado. Same thing in Maine. In fact, he has a lower chance of winning in Michigan than he does in Minnesota. And a lower chance of winning in Wisconsin than he does in Minnesota, than in Nevada, than in New Hampshire, all states that Hillary Clinton carried in 2016. Again, when we take a look at the Rust Belt, Pennsylvania, Biden is expected to win. Very narrow margin, but if you move over to Michigan, a lot more solid for the Biden campaign, a lot more solid in Wisconsin than Pennsylvania as well. Surprisingly, Minnesota is not as lenient to Joe Biden as Wisconsin might be, but on election day, we'll probably see both of those states flip. Not necessarily red, but I mean flip in terms of the chances of Biden winning. I think he has a much better chance at winning in Minnesota than he does in Wisconsin. As we move over to some other swing states, again, we've covered the South. New Hampshire isn't really super important. It's for electoral votes, but I really don't think that Donald Trump is going to perform too well, despite the polling data showing a close race, 46% to 43.4%. I think that Joe Biden is going to have a pretty substantial victory in New Hampshire. While it is close in regular presidential elections, this is not a regular presidential election by any means. And in fact, the fact that it did vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016 is only more of a sign that Donald Trump is not going to carry the state or a couple of other states. As we take a look at states like Iowa, Donald Trump has a much better chance at Iowa than he does in a number of other swing states. Same thing in Ohio. In fact, he has a better chance at winning Ohio than Iowa. I think that comes as a recent, new poll that was out today that showed, not today, but a poll that was pretty much the, gold tier in terms of polling data that showed Donald Trump only ahead by 1%. I mean, it was a 1% difference, and he won this state by nearly 10% in 2016. So Iowa, which what normally was a very substantial win for him in predictions and in 2016, not so much this time around. Ohio might break down before as a national bellwether at one point in time. Joe Biden was expected to carry it, but now Donald Trump is back on top, even though there's a very close polling data between, Vice President Biden and President Trump. So as we've covered pretty much all of the Rust Belt states and a lot of these southern states, Texas actually took me for a surprise. Donald Trump has a better chance at carrying Ohio and Iowa, according to this model, than Texas. Texas is only a 53% chance that he wins it. In fact, they expect him to win by 0.7%. The polling data does indicate a close race, and I do understand why they would use that in their characterization, but I don't necessarily think that it's going to be super favorable for Joe Biden. We're seeing him at around 47.9% in the forecast. I think that Donald Trump probably will be somewhere around 50%. It could be very similar to the 2018 Senate election in Texas, but I will say that Joe Biden's chances in Texas are very surprising, to say the least, looking at how large the percentage is. 47% chance of winning a state with 38 electoral votes. The election would practically be over at that point. In fact, in this scenario, Joe Biden would get 329 electoral votes. Donald Trump would get 209. So around 120, not around, exactly 120 more electoral votes, for Joe Biden than Donald Trump. As we take a look at some other states, again, Nevada, surprisingly, is closer than some of the other states. I mean, I really expected this one to be grouped in with a little bit more with Colorado and New Mexico. I was thinking maybe 73% chance that Biden wins here, but I don't necessarily think that Biden's going to win by a mere 2.5%. That's roughly the Hillary Clinton margin, and Joe Biden is 100% going to outrun her margin in these states. Again, the West Coast is pretty solid. We don't really see any competitive nature for Donald Trump or against Joe Biden in those states. Arizona, we have covered. Again, very, very narrow, but a Joe Biden victory regardless. So while I do see some states with a lighter red than what I would expect, it really all comes down to the fact that it could just be a wrong poll. But in the states that are heavily being polled with A-plus pollsters from 538, I would trust the data that's there, because it is typically very accurate, and the adjustments do necessarily show its overall lean in favor of the Democrats or the Republicans, which give us a very general idea of whether or not these polls are correct or incorrect. So we take a look at this data. Joe Biden would essentially, based off the pluralvote.com, I'll put this link in the description below. It's very interesting because they show the polling data average. They also show the media partisan model. partisanship model, and the forecast overall in terms of the vote. So it does give us some very interesting information. I think a lot of you guys, if you wanted to go a little bit more in depth or look at your own home state particularly, you should go ahead and do that. Again, link will be in the description below. But Joe Biden would essentially flip back the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and flip for the first time in decades in Georgia, flip back Florida, and again, for the first time in decades in Arizona, while holding on to Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, and Virginia, and New Hampshire. Oh my gosh, why do I have hiccups? Jeez, okay, I'm just going to try to end out this video right now. Donald Trump would get Iowa, Ohio, and Texas. Again, it is really surprising seeing some of these states lighter red, but again, that could all just be down to incorrect data or mismanaged polls from horrible pollsters. So that pretty much wraps up this video. Tomorrow's video will contain a Senate election prediction, because we do have some updates, especially in Iowa and Alaska, which I need to talk about specifically in another video. I also will be having the subscriber-decided election night release sometime soon. Again, it is the CNN theme, in case you were wondering. You can go ahead and vote in the community tab for the new colors that I'm using on my channel. If you want me to use the old ones or the new ones, go ahead and check that out as well. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Please consider joining as a member on this channel, and I will see you all tomorrow.